All right, and before we begin, any thoughts, questions? Just one second here. All righty. So, coming back to our main topic, which is about the so-called bodily-based satipatthana. And to quickly recap, satipatthana is really about either the procedure of establishing mindfulness or about the so-called foundation of mindfulness, the actual object to which you are directing mindfulness. And um, per the Anapanasati Sutta and other suttas, it is possible for us to be developing mindfulness with regards to body, feeling, mind, and the so-called Dhamma. And we talked about how by establishing mindfulness in the body, you are able to eradicate these fundamental mental defilements, such as sensual craving and conceit. So, just a few more words about how exactly that is done. On a few occasions, the Buddha described his program as the gradual pacification of sankharas. Now, you may recall, sankharas are mental exertions or mental activities that are responsible for generating stress, for generating mental suffering, right? So these movements of the mind include things such as your yearning, longing for certain experiences, your identifying with certain phenomenon as me, mine, and so on and so forth. Now, the expression gradual pacification of sankhara, therein contains the word gradual, meaning that for most people, the process of letting go doesn't occur um, abruptly, suddenly, in one fell swoop, and completely. It typically involves the mind putting aside a portion of sankhara, right, unloading itself in that process. And once some weight is unloaded, so to speak, the mind would be in a better position to detect even subtler sankharas. And then it will be able to repeat the process to an increasingly subtler levels. The common analogy used in the Buddhist tradition is that you being a prisoner, right? We being prisoners, we are shackled to a great iron ball, right? There is this great weight. And because of this great weight that you're carrying with you, uh, in your everyday life, you hardly detect subtle weight, such as the glasses that we're wearing or the clothing items that we're putting on our body and so forth. But this is because all of your attention is preoccupied with a great weight, right? But then once you are able to somehow unshackle yourself, to remove the great iron ball, right, to unload this big burden, then you are able to afford to observe very subtle things such as, um, being able to detect how the clothing items register as a kind of weight on your body and so forth. Now, what is the greatest weight we are able to remove at the initial stage of practice? Per the early suttas, it's something called sensuality. It is to leave behind the so-called sensual realm. Okay. So what exactly is sensuality? What exactly is the sensual realm? In the past, we talked about how it is meaningful to differentiate between what the suttas say versus what the commentaries say, right? Because oftentimes on very important issues, these two represent very different opinions. Sometimes they're contradictory to each other. So in the commentarial tradition, what exactly is sensuality? What exactly is the sensual realm you're trying to leave behind by going into jhanas? Well, sensuality in this tradition is sensory operation, meaning that you're able to see, meaning that you're able to hear, being able to smell, being able to taste, being able to experience touch sensations, right? These, per the commentarial tradition, is the sensual realm, is sensuality. And leaving behind sensuality would mean you're developing a sort of concentration that is so powerful, that is so exclusive as to render all sensual data non-operational. Okay, so you're so focused, right? You're so fused, you're so absorbed in the chosen object of attention. And this could be, like the counterpart image. This could be like some physical location and so forth, that none of the sensory phenomena would register in your consciousness. So this is typically the commentarial understanding of things. Now, in the suttas, in the early discourses, there's a very different picture that is painted. So what is sensuality? The suttas made it very clear that sensuality is not about, visual objects, auditory objects, and so on and so forth. It is not about shutting down of your senses. In fact, the entire project of jhana is not about developing a kind of deadpan focus where the outside world is simply excluded. It is really about, per the sutta's own words, sensual fever, sensual obsession, sensual passion. So what does that mean? Now, we've all had beautiful experiences in the past. We've all had traumatic experiences in the past. And for as long as craving is not cut off in the mental stream, we are driven by these experiences. And so, for example, we are afraid to revisit fearsome experiences, awful experiences. And therefore, we are doing things to steer clear of repeating such experiences. On the other hand, we feel nostalgic for beautiful, alluring experiences in the past. And therefore, we are scheming, we're planning, we're dreaming about, we're yearning to repeat, to duplicate, to expand upon these beautiful experiences. And this drivenness, our obsession with it, is that sensual fever that we talk about, is the sensuality that we talk about. And so, in other words, in the early suttas, if you want to be able to pacify a big portion of your sankharas, right? And this is done by ways of leaving behind sensuality, leaving behind sensual craving, leaving the so-called sensual realm, and then going into the jhanic realm, going into jhanas, first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, right? Is by ways of taking a break from the fever, the passion, the reveling, the obsession that we have for sensual experiences to such a large extent and in such a consistent way that your mind experiences coolness. Your mind experiences completeness, contentment, peace, and so forth. For that reason, first jhana is described as seclusion pleasure, right? It's not about fixing your eyes, gazing at your navel, or fixing your eyes at your nose tip. It's not about developing deadpan attentiveness, right? It is really about seclusion, meaning putting aside the big burden, right? Unburdening yourself. And then the result of that unburdening will be similar to a prisoner who's removed the big weight from his or her body, right? And as a result, which experiencing lightheartedness, ease, right? Deep rest, deep relaxation, mental refreshingness. You're like happy about the fact that you're no longer burdened. Okay, so that's really about um, sensuality. And let me give more specific examples of sensual craving, of sensuality, so you have a clear idea of exactly what we're trying to pacify, exactly what we're trying to put aside. So, as your meditation progresses, you will come to see that even thinking itself is kind of stressful, is kind of burdensome, right? But in the beginning, when we're talking about the so-called first jhana, your immediate goal is not to shut down thinking. Your immediate goal is not to um, eradicate every form of mental function, right? And going into a frozen state. So among the many reasons why not is the fact that it's just unrealistic, right? It's just going to create unnecessary frustration if you simply try to shut down your mind. And then, so what are you trying to put aside? You're trying to put aside the so-called unskillful mental qualities. The so-called unskillful mental qualities are exactly the mental activities that are involved in sensual craving. Such as what? What are some outstanding features or characteristics of sensuality, of the sensual realm? When a person is in the sensual realm, she is or he is primarily driven by the following agendas. His activities, her activities are primarily characterized by the following traits. So number one, something about sensual realm is competitiveness or rivalry. What does that mean? It means that your happiness is almost invariably built on winning out some kind of competition. I'm prettier than you. I'm wealthier than you. I'm more knowledgeable than you. I have more meditation experience than you, right? I have higher social status, right? And so on and so forth. Okay. And so why are people happy in the sensual realm? Because um, they're able to have access to greater material goods, right? They're able to show off more luxurious houses. They're able to drive, like better cars, right? And so forth. And so the sensual pursuit is really, in the scheme of things, a zero-sum game, meaning that my gain is your loss, right? Your gain is my loss. Unlike the sort of happiness that is beyond sensual realm, right? The happiness that is beyond sensual realm is not like that. And so my happiness can actually add to your happiness. You can delight in my happiness. You can be made happy as a result of seeing the fact that people are happy. People are enjoying well-being. You see, you, it doesn't have to be the case that, oh, you're the person who wins out, right? You're the alpha dog, right? You're occupying the top rung in a, food chain and so forth. But rather you're experiencing things like contentment, which is not built on a sort of comparative mentality, any kind of rivalry, right? You're experiencing things like ease, which could be really shared, like everyone can equally bask in a sense of ease without detracting from each other's experience of ease, right? And so on and so forth. So that would be the first thing, competitiveness. And if you look at a mind that is involved in competitiveness, in rivalry, what is that like? What does it feel like? Yes, it may feel exciting, okay? But also, invariably, there is agitation, there is restlessness, there is insecurity, right? Yes, you may be the top dog at this moment, but someone else is always scheming to bring you down, to outdo you, right? Yet you cannot always be young. You cannot always be strong. You cannot you cannot be guaranteed that you're always wealthy, right? And you're always this wealthy, right? You cannot uh, um, guarantee that you always be the center of other people's loving attention, right? So, with regard to this element, you're trying to put aside. If you're able to put aside this element in a very thorough, consistent manner, your mind will experience a sort of pleasure, a sort of gratification that has nothing to do with how much material goods you've managed to hoard, how much worldly attainment you've managed to accomplish. What other things can we say about the sensual realm, about sensuality? The other thing is that sensuality provides only fleeting, precarious, and unreliable stimulation. So, yes, it is great to be at the center of people's attention. But then how long is that going to last? People talk about 15 minutes of fame, right? Why? Because novelty wears out quickly, because people get bored easily, right? If you happen to be an extremely popular and successful YouTuber, right, your own channel and so forth, you have to constantly be thinking about coming up with fresh materials in order to be able to continue to latch onto people's attention. Right? My favorite analogy for the nature of sensuality, how fleeting it is, involves hummingbirds, right? So people look at hummingbirds darting about, right? They fly to this flower, take a sip at the nectar, and then immediately fly to the next flower. And most people will look at them and go, wow, what happy creatures, right? They're, experiencing sweetness, right? They're tasting sweet nectar all the time. But with a closer observation or with a better understanding of the actual mechanisms involved, you'll see that hummingbirds are actually what? Constantly at the verge of starvation. Okay. So when they go to sleep, they have to go into this very special kind of coma, right? Metabolism, where metabolism is shut down, right? Otherwise, if they stop feeding even for a few minutes, they run the risk of starving to death. Okay? And so reason that they're darting about so busily is because they're hungry, extremely so. So yes, as soon as they take a sip of the nectar, the hunger may be slightly satiated, might be slightly mitigated, right? And there's this one brief moment of satisfaction And then that is immediately followed by renewed hunger. And if you look at the nature of the central realm, it is very much like that. Okay, so you're holding hands with your loved one, and this moment you're like, wow, I'm in heaven. This is like paradisical, right? This is like perfect. And then your favorite person tells you how much she cares for you, right? And then 2 minutes afterward, your mind is invaded by insecurity again. When was the last time you told me you love me? Right? I just told you, right? You have to be reminded that you're loved in the morning, in the noontime, in the afternoon, right? You hardly ever get tired of it. Why? Because we're so frequently assaulted by insecurity. That this one utterance, one expression of I love you, maybe can abate your mental anguish, can abate your insecurity for some time, but it can never permanently, it can never do it permanently. If you look at how quickly we're bored by things, right? We're surfing the net busily and being dazzled by all the wonderful entertainment that is provided. And then maybe you're able to uh, notice that each picture is able to capture your attention for 2 seconds before you, what's next? What's still on offer? Right? That's the nature of sensuality. So when the Buddha assesses quality of happiness, quality of pleasure, he had these things in mind. How enduring is the happiness, right? How satisfying, how gratifying is the pleasure. You know, pleasure can be very stimulating, but can be rather ungratifying. And so you're always hungry for more. You're always looking for more, right? You can't really just settle down and truly enjoy the present. And even as you're enjoying an ungratifying type of pleasure, you are simultaneously planning ahead. How can I get more? How can I protect what I already have? And that's not true happiness if it is intermixed by all such stress, consideration, scheming, planning, fear, and so forth. Okay. In the Buddha's assessment of quality of happiness, there's also the consideration of how hard is it for you to get it? How arduous is the pursuit process? If you really think about it, when you want to elicit a loving response from your loved one, right? In the morning, you take care of your hairdo. You have to think about, what kind of sense of fashion you are projecting to the world, right? You have to be able to engage in witty banters with people, right? Maybe show off your sense of humor, right? How smart you are, right? How sophisticated you are with the political situation of the world, right? Otherwise, you risk, your romantic partner seeing you as a dumb person, right? You risk your romantic partner feeling bored with you. And in the Buddhist consideration, if you need to go through great lengths to secure pleasure, like hummingbirds, right? You have to dart about. You have to expend a lot of energy in securing pleasure. Then the pleasure is a low quality one. What sort of pleasure is inexpensive or in fact free? What sort of a pleasure is really easily accessible? What sort of pleasure that is so close to you? You don't really need to plan for it. You don't need to scheme. You don't need to outcompete other people. You don't need to try to hoard, try to monopolize, try to, aggrandize, and to be jealous of what other people have, and to be afraid of losing what you already have, and so forth. Once again, there's this meditative pleasure, the pleasure that comes with the letting go, right? So, in other words, in the Buddha's understanding, letting go doesn't just lead to privation. It doesn't just lead to your missing out on fun. Letting go can actually lead to deep satisfaction, dispassion. I know it sounds a little, you know, door and dry and a little off-putting to some people. But then dispassion, which really means a freedom from attachment, could lead to, like a quality of mind that is deeply pleasurable. Unlike anything that you try to feverishly chase down in the outside world. So once again, what is first jhana about? The seclusion pleasure. How skillful you are in um, knowing the difference between superior quality pleasure versus poor quality pleasure. How skillful you are at taking a break and disengaging from the pursuit of inferior pleasures. How skillful you are at basking wholeheartedly in superior pleasures. So these are the sorts of skills that are developed in meditation, and therefore meditation is not just about deadpan focus or neutral observation and so forth. This is why we're seeing this greatly varied, multi-pronged, holistic, dynamic approach to meditation as shown in the Anapanasati Sutta, right? So any question about that part, about sensuality? Well, another thing I might add is, in meditation, you might be training yourself to just temporarily cut off your ties with sensuality. However, as you become better at this practice, it's possible for the mind to become completely weaned off from this primordial addiction. Okay, so in other words, your freedom from sensuality may be momentary in the beginning, but as one progresses in meditation, right, per the early Buddhist tradition, sensuality is a kind of primordial habit that we keep um, engaging in and therefore reinforcing it. And if you're able to increasingly access the higher pleasure and not be dependent on, not lean on sensuality as your source of pleasure, then what happens? Eventually, this habit will be deconditioned, right? It could be weakened until it becomes completely eradicated. In the early Buddhist tradition, the complete eradication of sensuality amounts to the winning of the third spiritual fruition, right? Called the non-returnership, right? This is the second highest level awakening, second highest level of liberation, if you will. And the highest level awakening, arahanthood, involves the eradication of something called conceit, which we will talk about later on, or self-identification. Right? So questions, comments about this part? All right. So I'm going to try to tie this to the bodily based satipatthana. Okay. So how is the body figured in all that we've said so far? Well, there is a physical dimension to sensuality. There is a mental dimension to sensuality. There is a dimension to sensuality that involves perception. There is a dimension to sensuality that involves feeling. right? There's a dimension to sensuality that involves the nervous system, and we can go on. Now, in order to put aside sensuality and, in fact, to wean off your addiction to it, you don't necessarily have to uh, knock down all the requisite conditions or the ingredients that comprises sensuality. You don't have to do that. Every one of the so-called mental defilements is like a house, is like a house of cards, right? You just need to knock down, you just need to remove a few or perhaps even one strategically situated card, and the entire structure will fall down. So, in other words, if you are able to work in your body, right, and just focus on this one aspect of sensuality, it is possible for you to come to fully penetrate the nature of sensuality and to become free from it. Now, one thing we could say about the body's role in sensuality is, why is it that your mind is constantly looking elsewhere, is yearning for the future, is reminiscing the past? Why is the mind always doing this? Right? If you look at your mind's activity in everyday situation, what is it doing mostly? Yes, sometimes you're thinking constructively. Sometimes you're making important plans. Sometimes you're dealing with the task at hand. You're doing things that have to be done, right? There's hardly any problem with it, right? You can't really fault those types of activities. But, one can argue 99% of the time you're not really doing that. You're completely wasting your energy. Say, for example, daydreaming. So what is daydreaming? Daydreaming is made of fear and longing, per the Buddha's analysis. The exact words he used are worries and hankering, right? Worries and hankerings. So you have something, you're worrying about what future may bring, for example. And at the same time, you're thirsty, you're hungry for what future may bring. Oh, only if I can become rich, right? Only if, she likes me back, he likes me back, right? And so forth. Yes, I saw a hand. Albert, please.
I'm just curious, can you point us to the to the literature of what you just said?
Yes, absolutely. There are literally hundreds of suttas that talk about putting aside worries and hankering. The word hankering is sometimes translated as covetousness. Okay, I personally don't like that translation. The translation is really following the example of, what the Bible says about not coveting the neighbor's wife and so forth. Actually, the word is better translated as hankering, right? It better conveys the idea that it's about mental thirst. It's not just about envy, like being envious, right? So all you have to do is actually just do a Google search, like worry, hankering, sutta, and
Okay.
you will be able to find hundreds of.
I just really appreciated the daydreaming. That's what really resonated with me. So same thing. You think I can do the same thing with daydreaming?
The term daydreaming you will not be able to find in the
Okay.
entire early Buddhist canon.
I didn't
They,
think
they,
so.
they
That's
use
why.
other words to convey the idea. Yeah. So there in the suttas, let me give you an example. There are quite a few words, that can um, be considered as analogous to daydreaming. Like for example, unskillful vitaka, right? It's a kind of rumination where, due to your strong attachment to something that you're concerned with, and then your thoughts just revolve around that topic. It just keep coming back, right? And that kind of activity the suttas talk about. Yeah. And so when you look at the nature of daydreaming, right, it shows how little you are ever truly experiencing peace. Your mind is always discontent, right? Your mind is embedded with a barb of craving, to use the sutta's expression. There is this like a fishing barb that's somehow embedded in the flesh of your heart. And because of the discomfort created, so the heart is writhing and turning, and tossing and turning, right? Every which way it tries to move, it is bothered by the presence of that barb. And the mind is like that. And so the Buddha says that your most important duty in life is to remove that barb. Right? And this is assuming that you're wise enough to recognize the urgency of the Buddhist message. Otherwise, people are preoccupied with other tasks. Right? According to the Buddha, this is the most important task. Right? With this task done, everything else is really secondary. Right? You may think that, oh, well, having a fulfilling love life is important, but with the barb removed, it will be of secondary importance, or it will be of no importance, right? So in other words, everything that you're thinking about being important at this moment is somehow connected to the presence of the barb, one way or the other. The presence of the barb is distorting your perception, is distorting your value. And so you can't really objectively look at so-called existence and reality and know what is important. You're always driven to chase down things of hollow value that can't really truly satisfy. Yeah. Okay, so coming back to our main topic, right? Body, what role does it play? Well, why are you daydreaming? Because you are not comfortable here. You are actually driven away from here, right? Why are you driven away from here, from now? Because you're bored, for example. This is one possible reason, right? And why are you driven by boredom? Why? Because boredom is painful. It's as simple as that. Most people will not see that. Most people will see boredom as neutral, right? And most people, they're able to fill the vacuum or to um, ameliorate their boredom by immediately turning their attention to something. And if there's no entertaining things in your immediate environment, you could always daydream. That's what the mind is always doing. And we do this almost like automatically, so quickly, so reflexively, right? So we rarely had any chance to meditate on nature of boredom. So we're not able to see boredom as an act of resistance. There's an exertion. The mind is trying to push something away. The mind is trying to run away. The mind is uprooting itself. And then, like actively concocting a scenario that I can run into. Right? This is all sankharas, by the way. There's a word again. Okay. And why are you uncomfortable in the present? Well, there are many reasons, right? But instead of overcomplicating the matters, meditation oftentimes tries to simplify the matter. So you could just focus on one or two key things, and then you will find an opening to deal with even trickier problems. So what can you focus on? Look at how complete your sense of body is. If you're missing something in the body, then you're not comfortable here. Another way of saying this is, are you physically contented? Are you comfortable in your own skin, right? To use the common expression. If you're not comfortable in your own skin, then the mind is raring to go somewhere else. As soon as, you know, uh, a tempting alternative presents itself, immediately the mind is distracted. But the problem with that is, like a monkey, the mind will grasp hold of this tempting alternative and only holding on to it for a very brief moment until novelty wears off, until the entertaining value wears off. And then the mind has to look for something else. This is why the mind hardly ever experiences peace. It's so busy fending off things. It's so busy trying to feed itself, to stave off starvation. You see, that's why that's why we don't experience peace, right? And most people, they're so used to this, by the way. They don't even see this as a problem. They're inured to this phenomenon. The analogy given in the suttas is as follows. You're like a horse or a cow that's skinned alive and then being stung by hundreds of bugs, by gadflies, by horseflies, all day long, right? And then, if you look at a typical horse, like a cow, right? It looks happy, right? But if you look closely, you'll see that it's waving its tails busily to wave off the bugs, right? It's shaking its body, creating this little tremor to shake off, to woo off the bugs and so forth. And our mind is like that. We're so inured to constant bombardment, to constant agitation, to constant restlessness. For most people, they are living in the central realm all day long. And even in their dreams, they're still in the central realm. They're chased by monsters and they're chasing down the end of the rainbow, right? Looking towards the horizon, imagining great wealth waiting for them, beautiful human beings waiting for them. A scenario where they will become prince and princess. So the body, right? The number one lesson the Buddha typically gave to a newly ordained monk or nut is to cultivate a sense of ease or a sense of relaxation in the body and then protect it wherever you go. So, in other words, you're not just learning to relax, you're not just learning to be content in the present moment bodily sensations, but you're trying to maintain this frame even as you are going about your everyday life. You're trying to prevent the arising of like a crack, like a window of opportunity for sensuality to leak in, right? Sensuality is kind of like a leakage in the suttas analogy. And you're patching your roof, you're making sure that there's no such leakage. Everywhere you go, you're kind of being mindfully aware, making sure that your body is well fed. Your mind is well fed, relatively so. The better you're able to do this, the more your mind is willing to settle down. Okay. A famous analogy goes like this. You're trying to capture eel. Okay, if you're from Southeast Asia, right? Eels, you know, are these squiggly creatures that live in murky waters, right? And they oftentimes would come out in great numbers after raining season. And people try to capture eels by hand. And what happened? They would find it very difficult to capture eels by hand. They're slippery, right? They easily elude your capture. So they come up with this clever way of capturing the eel. Okay, and pardon the rather graphic analogy that's going to follow. They will find the corpse of a dead cat, a dead dog, right? And then we'll bury the corpse close to some muddy hole, to some water hole, next to the bank of a pond and so forth, where the mud is wet, right? And after some hours, they'll go back there, and all the eels in the vicinity, they're attracted by the corpse. They all congregate in the vicinity, and voila, you are able to capture them in great numbers. That's the way to do it. And the mind is like that too. Yes, sometimes, you have no other ways than to beat down your mind. Sometimes you have to do that, right? In real life, you hate studying, but then you just have to force it. There are occasions that call for brute force, right? But in the Buddha's assessment, that's because we're not skilled enough. We don't have better alternatives. You have better alternatives, you could always opt for the better alternatives. Right? And what is a better alternative? Create comfortable enough of a space for the mind so the mind happily, voluntarily, willingly settle therein. If you look at the typical suttas formula for entering into deep concentration, for entering into samadhi, for going into jhanas, right? First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. How does it go? It doesn't go like fix your attention in nose tip, develop superhuman concentration. No, that's not how the suttas describe the process of samadhi. The suttas goes, learn to gladden the mind, experience happiness. When the mind is happy, the body feels satisfied. When the body is satisfied, it relaxes. When the body relaxes, the mind settles down. When the mind settles down, you are able to see activities as they come to be. That's a process of meditation in early Buddhism. Very natural, for lack of better terms, organic, right? You're trying to create favorable conditions as opposed to directly control the mind. The mind is like a phantom. Sometimes the more you try to control it, the more you'll, like get frustrated, right? The more agitated that the mind seems to have become, right? So you just have to know how to create favorable conditions for the settling down of the mind. And you can do this by ways of working on your body. Now, there are many things you can do with regards to working with the body, but today we can begin by focusing on this one skill, relaxation. Relaxation. How do we do this skillfully? How do we do this in a deep, profound way? How do we do this in a way that integrates with the so-called right view? Okay. So there are a few things I want to talk about. One is sometimes when you feel like your body is uncomfortable, right? You may be talking about objective phenomena. Yes, there's discomfort present, right? The body can be susceptible to pain, to discomfort, and so forth. But oftentimes, when you reflexively find the body uncomfortable, it is because there is the presence of agitation, restlessness, unnecessary tension in the body without your, being fully conscious of them. This is why the body is uncomfortable. And by actively removing unnecessary tension in the body, you are able to, number one, more likely to create pleasant sensations in the body. And then number two, you are able to become more easily contented with even simple sensations. You won't be requiring very complex, stimulating sensations to make you happy. Okay, so in other words, the trick to making the mind happy is not necessarily in the amount of stimulation you're able to bring forth. It's not a matter, okay, eating one chocolate makes me this happy. Eating 100, pieces of chocolate will make me 100 times happier. No, it doesn't work like that, right? Happiness doesn't work like that, right? It's also about the way you interface with the experience, the way you engage the experience, the way you participate in that experience, what kind of mindset you bring, how open you are, right? How resistant you are. All these things that factor into how an experience manifests. This is why experience is subjective. It cannot be quantified, right? It can't really be measured, right? It's a subjective phenomena, and as such, your intention plays a crucial role. Okay, and so coming back to relaxation in the presence of tension. Now, I'm not saying that your goal is to be 100% relaxed all the time, zero tension. If you do that, you will not be able to even sit up. Because sitting up and maintaining this posture require your exerting yourself physically somewhat, right? You're laying back, laying into your sofa, whatever the case might be. You are negotiating with gravity. You're negotiating with gravity somewhat, right? You're exerting your muscles here and there. But on top of these very basic exertions, you're typically doing a lot more than that. You are, for example, harboring in your body tightness that is a result of worrying. That is a result of your habitual reaction to past trauma, for example. So if you have been a abuse victim for a long time, you would tend to curl your body perhaps in a subtle way. Even in the way you stand up, you don't stand up in a, like a confident way, right? In a way where, you allow your body to become uncompressed, right? Non-curled, right? You're um, presenting yourself to the world in a way where you subjectively feel like you are openness and you are not um, in fear of the rising and the passing away of experiences. Okay. So cultivating relaxation doesn't mean that you need to be 100% relaxed, right, in some arbitrary way. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you're trying to detect whether there is unnecessary tension or not, and to pacify, to let go of, to disengage from the unnecessary tension. Now, what exactly constitutes unnecessary tension? Remind yourself that there is no absolutely correct answer to this. This is a subjective exploration. This involves a kind of experimentation, right? And typically, the more peaceful you become, the more trustworthy your insight will become. Your intuition will tell you a lot about what can be let go. This I don't need to carry around, right? This is unnecessary. This kind of expenditure of energy is just creating friction with reality. It's just creating inner conflict. It's just creating stress. And that's the first thing to keep in mind. Right? Open-ended exploration. There's no one arbitrary, objective, absolute correct answer when it comes to what is unnecessary tension, what is deep relaxation. And then number two, true relaxation is an ongoing process as opposed to some um, arbitrary place that you would finally arrive at. Okay, so instead of going, am I relaxed yet? And then you say yes or no, right? You go, hey, let me see what the process of relaxing is like. It's an ongoing thing. Okay. And then another thing is let physical sensations to know how well you are relaxing. In other words, instead of treating relaxation as an idea, as an abstract concept, you're listening to what the body tells you. As you're trying to relax, your body feels a certain way. There are physical sensations that are indicative of the fact that you're trying to unburden yourself. You're um, trying to get a sense of what's it like to go with the flow, right? What's it like to settle into the present moment? And by the way, I'm using all these different angles to describe relaxation. Why do I do this? This is because all these ideas, all these concepts, all these different ways of conceptualizing relaxation, they trigger different um, responses in people, and then they form different associations in people. I've met students in the past who, when they're told to just relax, and they complain. The more you tell me to relax, the more tense I become, right? Right? And then there are people who, when they're told to just live in the present moment, and they complain. They go, "My present moment sucks. I practice meditation in order to run away from the present moment. Why the heck do you want me to come back to the present moment?" Right? It's just so painful, right? So I'm trying to um, give you the impression that nothing about meditation is dogmatic, right? It is, like not one single doctrine that somehow accurately and fully captures the full flavor of relaxation, of letting go, and so forth. When you're meditating, you're working with your perception too. You are looking at how this perception, this understanding, this interpretation is peace. Right? If it's good, good, right? And even if it's good, there might be room for further modification. There might be room for further refinement, right? And if it's bad, then, like don't become stuck in that mode in believing that, oh, like because I'm meditating, I shouldn't be adjusting anything. I'm supposed to just sit still, right? And just freeze my mind, just repeat this technique in a mechanical way. No, right? Once again, meditation can be dynamic, can involve a lot of adjusting activities, especially in the beginning. And yes, unification of mind, where things fall away and then you become deeply quiet and there is no seeming activity. That's possible. But we're not trying to force that to happen, right? So we allow a range of activities, uh, skillful activities to take place. So we're just creating favorable conditions. And if your mind goes into profound quietude, great. If it doesn't, it's okay. You're mindful. You're still in the process of establishing mindfulness. Questions, comments about that part? This is all the theoretical aspect, right? And then later on, we can move into the practice aspect. Any questions about the theoretical aspect? Alrighty. Oh, yes,
Uh,
Xiaoting.
Professor, I'm wondering, you are talking about cultivating relaxation. That is referred to, that is correlated with the body part or the mind part. I
Okay.
want
Yeah, yeah.
to.
So we are still focusing on the first tetrad. If you recall, the first tetrad, the first group of four, consists of the four steps, right? Knowing long breath, knowing short breath. In the past, we talked about how this is really looking at how breathing as a background music, right? Not the main topic, but kind of as a moderating force, creates effects in your overall sense of being, right? It may be conducive to relaxation, may be conducive to mental alertness, right? And then the third step is developing awareness of the whole body, right? And then the third step is done in preparation for four, right? We want to become sensitive to physical phenomena so that we are able to better detect exertions in the body. Exertions in the body will include tightness, will include your holding on to patterns of tension. Most people do. We're just so used to being with these patterns of tension that we become oblivious of them, right? So this is like, like people who say habitually frown or people who habitually hunch, right? People who habitually curl up their body in a defensive posture, right? They oftentimes do so unwittingly, without their awareness. When people ask you, "Hey, why are you tight like this? Why are you, exerting yourself in such a way?" They don't feel like they're exerting themselves. They feel like this is their default state. This is their natural state. Right? And sometimes you need to meditate in order to detect the artificiality of your habitual pattern. Right? It feels like autopilot mode to you, but in fact, you are subtly exerting yourself. Yeah. So this is what we're going to do about relaxation is really pertaining to the fourth step, pacifying bodily sankharas. Yeah. And I want to remind you once again that there are many different facets to this technique. I'm just introducing one. Okay, so this is very specifically about relaxation. Yeah, and that's a very good question, by the way. Any other thoughts? Okay, if not, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a short break at this point. We're going to take two shorter breaks today. Okay, because I don't want you to be sitting too long. Okay, the key to maintaining physical health is to know to skillfully alternate between motion and stillness, right? So I recommend that you make good use of the ensuing 10-minute break by um, walking around, stretching, moving your body, helping to animate the internal circulation instead of remaining seated and staring at the computer screen. Okay, so I will encourage you to use the next 10 minutes or so to walk around, stretch, right? To look out the window, to look at far places, and so forth. Okay, and we will be back at 10:10. For the next practice session, feel free to either adopt the so-called formal stance, the formal posture, or um, you're free to take a more informal approach to meditation. That's okay too. In either case, you're free to turn off your camera if you like. So the more formal approach to meditation would typically involve you're sitting in an upright fashion, right, keeping your back straight, and allowing the weight of your upper body to rest on the natural curvature of your lower back. And when you do this correctly, you'll notice how your chest is opened up a little bit, is opened up somewhat, so it doesn't feel curled up, compressed. And if you prefer to take a more informal approach, you're free to meditate while standing up, while lying down, resting on the floor. Take a more casual sitting posture. We're going to direct our attention to the present moment bodily sensations. This doesn't have to involve your forcefully locking your attention to some region in the body. Rather, you could simply put forth the following question in a very gentle way. What does the body feel like? How does the body manifest in awareness in this moment? But instead of having to send your attention out somewhere to find a body or to locate a region of the body, what you can do is you could sit back and let the mirror-like quality of awareness do its own thing. Whatever physical sensations happen to be mirrored, to be reflected in the mirror, let that be so. So you're not trying to chase down some specific sensations. You're allowing the body to appear in your awareness. And it is always good to preface your meditation practice by reminding yourself, putting aside worries in relation to the world. So in other words, you don't have to concern yourself with putting out every form of thought, but you do want to actively put aside worrying thoughts. If you really have to think, then think about the topic of relaxation. And remind yourself to put aside hankering in relation to the world. Hankering is mental thirst, the yearning, longing for some future scenario, the being nostalgic for the past. And even if you're not completely relaxed, just by doing this, you might notice some changes in physical sensation. And if there is no positive change, it's okay too. But chances are you might notice how the body feels a little lighter, maybe, a little less burdened. It's as if your body is usually taking the brunt of mental impact, the weight of worry, the weight of hankering. And now that you have worry and hankering temporarily put aside, you're also putting aside the weight that these things have on the body. And now try to relax. And when you're trying to relax, remind yourself you're not relaxing into sleepiness. You're not relaxing into torpor. Rather, you're relaxing into sensitivity. You are interested in what a relaxed body feels like. You are interested in tasting ease in the body as you relax. So once again, don't think of relaxation as going into sleepiness, lulling the mind into torpor. But instead, think of how relaxation is conducive to greater sensitivity, so that a subtler aspect of the body is revealed to you as you become more relaxed. You're able to detect sensations that are otherwise elusive to you. And physical sensations may manifest in the form of bubble-like phenomena, electrical current-like phenomena, ripple-like phenomena, or whatever. It's okay. But then you are able to see that as you are relaxing, it's like there is this new dimension of the body that's opened up, more refreshing, more serene, with regards to this sense of serene body. In the beginning, you might not appreciate it. You might ignore it. You might not recognize its significance. But then if you're willing to relax, relax your expectation of some intense, supernormal stimulation. Relax this neediness to always have a lot of food to chomp on, to chew on. Relax into the experience of savoring fragrant tea instead of a very sugary drink. Maybe it's not as stimulating, as traumatic as sensual experiences, but it is something that you can learn to appreciate. And how do you cultivate this appreciation? Well, instead of finding fault with it, recognize what's good about it. Like, for example, how easily and how free this is. It doesn't cost you any money to relax. We oftentimes think that we need to go to faraway places to spend a lot of money, to go through arduous pursuit in order to have happiness. But then notice how when you're allowing tension to dissolve, your mind becomes more easily contented. It's like it needs fewer things. And as you're appreciating this, don't just dwell in the abstract, don't dwell in the conceptual level. Stay anchored to the body. Stay grounded in physical sensations. Treat relaxation as an ongoing process. Instead of asking yourself, am I relaxed or am I not relaxed? Simply note, relaxing. Just be patient about it. And you might become increasingly alert about the presence of some pattern of tension in the body. Unnecessary tightness, unnecessary exertion. You're happy to more fully surrender the body to gravity. You're happy to go with the Tao, so to speak, right? To surrender to effortlessness. Yes, there might be natural energies that well up, that cause you to engage your muscles, to tighten some parts of the body, to adjust your posture, to continue to negotiate with gravity. But then overall, you're inclining towards effortlessness. You're inclining towards relaxation. Every time you notice how your mind is becoming duller as a result of this relaxing attempt, remind yourself, I'm interested in discovering the refreshing body that is relaxed. I'm interested to come into contact with subtler physical sensations that are detectable when I'm relaxed. I'm interested in becoming more sensitive to the possible patterns of tension the body might be carrying. Stay anchored to bodily sensations. Don't just play with the ideas. The ideas, the thoughts are just there to guide you, to help you remain established in mindfulness. Occasionally, you might come back and check the way you're using your attention. So see if you're straining too much. For example, when you're told to be aware of your body, are you staring? Are you turning your mind or turning your eyes into something like a microscope? You're trying to discover something hidden underneath. Put aside that kind of expectation. If you notice you're straining in the way you pay attention, relax that. Soften your gaze. Remind yourself that you don't have to stare into any part of the body to be aware of it. You could actually just sit back, lie into your awareness, and just let whatever kind of body appear, whatever sensations to come and go. You're not trying to chase down something. You're not holding, like a video camera trying to capture some special image. No, rather, you're like a mirror, perfectly resting. Whatever appears in the mirror appears. Whatever disappears, disappears. You're not chasing down anything. You're not preventing anything from appearing. Make sure that you're not subtly cocking your eyes. When people meditate, they associate this with the experience of studying, and they cock their eyes, right? And they try to stare, and they're frowning a little, and tighten the rim of their head, and so forth. See if your way of being aware of your body is creating straining, is creating unnecessary tension. And relax that. Let that go. Disengage. Abide in natural awareness, which doesn't require you to cock your eyes, to strain, to stare, to gaze intently, to try to create something. If it helps, ask yourself, do I need to spend any energy at all to remain aware? Or is awareness natural and requires no energy? And after doing these rounds of checking up your attention, come back to the body. You may not find anything unusual or very pleasant right off the bat. But if you're patient with the practice, if you stay right here in an almost preemptive way to see if there's physical resistance arising, right? Maybe there's a part of the mind that goes, oh, this is kind of boring. And then corresponding to that thought, you're able to notice a subtle physical exertion. It's like the body is wanting to be somewhere else. Maybe there's a thought, I want to go into deep concentration. I notice how corresponding to that thought, there's a subtle physical sensation, physical exertion. Or maybe there's none. It's okay. Just be patient here. Remind yourself that your level of satisfaction is not dependent on the intensity of stimulation. Your level of satisfaction has a lot to do with contentment. Contentment is a quality that is directly linked to letting go, to dispassion. So if you frequently abide in contentment, you are rendering your mind receptive to the higher teaching. There is no absolutely correct way to relax. Experiment. You could gently repeat the phrase, relax. Or you could put it into a sort of inquiry. What does the relaxing body feels like? In the beginning, your attempt at relaxation may involve more exertion, but try to feel your way into what is natural relaxation, where you're simply disengaging from exertions. You're not trying to add something more to the experience. You're simply letting go of, you're simply not continuing to engage in patterns of exertion. Now, you may not be experiencing perfect quietude, but look at your mind in the present moment. As a result of your training and relaxation, is it becoming more content? Is it as hungry as, say, an hour ago, when it busily and actively tried to weave contents of daydreaming, busily trying to enter into different kinds of daydreaming to get measly entertainment? And we are bringing this practice session to an end. Before you resume your everyday activities, such as listening to the lecture, if you like, you can make the following resolve in the mind. You can make the following resolution in the mind. Whatever I am doing in everyday life, let me try to preserve the sense of relaxation. Even if it's just for a little bit. You don't even have to be greedy about how much you relax, so long that there is this subtle hint to incline towards relaxation. Notice how much more clarity that introduces. Okay, and with that thought, please open your eyes. If you like, you can turn your camera back on. Questions, comments? Another thing that I can add is that we're not trying to relax the body in a nilly-willy way. Okay, we're not just, like relax the body for its own sake. When you're relaxing your body, you can ask yourself, how does this lead to contentment? How does this lead to the mind willingly surrendering at least a portion of its usual busyness, its usual blind reactivity, its usual attempt at sensual craving, running into fantasies, yearning for something, and so forth. And the more you try to, the more you're able to discern this connection, right, between the mind's letting go and the body's relaxation, right, the more you know how to relax in that precise manner, in that useful, in that conducive manner. Yes, Xiaoqing.
Yeah, Professor, I find the meditation process is very, how to say that? It's very different. Yeah, I never imagined that relaxation could be in this way. In my prior experiences, I might use relaxation to recharge. Yeah, but you just mentioned that, yeah, under your guidance, that relaxation can be used uh, to separate our tensions from our body, or how to say that. Yeah, I could just have a taste of that, and I noticed that in your wording, you say that relax and to a status not to fall asleep but to awake or things like that. Yeah, in China, in the meditation, we also have some wordings, but never describe it um in such accurate way, I think. Yeah. When yeah, some classmates of the class they may ask that if I when I relaxed, I feel so sleepy and I fall asleep and things like that. Yeah.
Mm. So even in the case that um, the result of your relaxing your body is you're falling asleep, right? Taking a nap. It's not the worst thing you can do to yourself, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Right?
yeah,
If you're
yeah.
able to, like rest deeply and take a very effective power nap, right? It's really not a bad thing at all. But um, on the other hand, it's really good to help your mind see that um, it's not just dullness that
Yeah,
you can escape into,
yeah,
to alleviate the pain, right? It's not just daydreaming, or daydreaming is not the only option you have in order to escape from the present moment pain. Um, help the mind see that there is a third option.
Yeah.
There is pleasure to be had in clarity, in contentment, in a body that is unburdened. You're all of a sudden having access to these subtle sensations. And these subtle sensations, for lack of better terms, they have like a massaging effect on your overall nervous system. It
Yeah.
doesn't just make you feel good. It actually would change your value system. It would change the way you look at things. It will gravitate the mind further towards letting go. Your mind will become more receptive to the higher teachings, right? So before your body is relaxed, right? Before your mind have access to like subtler types of pleasure, and you teach the person the higher teaching, not self, letting go completely. There's none in the phenomenal realm that offers true satisfaction. Your mind wouldn't listen. The mind will rebel against such a teaching, right? It's only when the mind is contented and happy and really feeling safe and sufficiently quieted down that it recognizes the power of the Dharma. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also feel like that as the process in the meditation reminds me of a cultivation experience last year. I think it is quite similar because at that time I was so determined to cultivate hard and hard and hard and yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
master told me
Yeah.
to have a rest, just to have a rest. And
Yeah.
after the rest, a lot of things changed. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that is yeah.
You raise a very important point that I really want to talk more about. So there seems to be this contradiction in the Buddhist teaching. On the one hand, we're told the Buddhist meditation program is about gradual pacification of sankharas, right? On the other hand, you are told, strive diligently, do not fall prey to heedlessness, right? There's this, quality called energy, called vigor, right?
Yeah.
Called vidya that we're supposed to cultivate. So how do we reconcile these two? On the one hand, the path is about, once again, gradual pacification, sankhara. You're inclining towards effortlessness. In fact, nibbana is defined as resolution, pacification of sankharas, right? Where the mind is no longer struggling, where the mind no longer creates suffering for itself through unnecessary exertion, right? On the other hand, diligence, energy, well, it really goes something like this. When the Buddha advised, do not fall prey to heedlessness, he's really telling you to not forget to relax, not forget to incline towards effortlessness. So ultimately, the so-called striving in Buddha Dharma is not about you're taking on more duties, you're taking on extra striving, you're taking on more things to do. It's about you're keeping in mind, right? Have this mindfulness, to have this remembrance, to always find more room to let go, to always find whether or not you're able to incline to maintain this frame of ease, for example, maintain, this attitude of letting go, for example. It's only in situations when you have no other option than to say bite your teeth and to um, you know, resort to brute force, that you take on additional activities. Otherwise, in general, the Buddhist teaching tends towards effortlessness. If you look at early Buddhism, even with regards to qualities such as metta, which is oftentimes problematically translated as loving kindness, right? In early Buddhism, it is not about saving all living beings, not that at all. The Buddha, on a couple occasions, actively advised against that. Right? So, what is metta? What is goodwill? Goodwill is unburdening your mind of enmity. unburdening your mind of animosity, unburdening your mind of unforgivingness, unburdening your mind of anger, unburdening your mind of aversion, unburdening your mind of any sort of non-constructive activities towards suffering. That's what goodwill means. For that reason, it's better to translate metta as goodwill as opposed to loving kindness, right? When the Buddha taught to protect your goodwill as the only child, this passage is frequently mistranslated as treating all living beings as your only child and you look after them like their mom, right? So in early Buddhism, it's about a fewness of desires and fewness of duties. And then, yes, in life, there are things you have to do, right? Sometimes when nature calls, you have to pee, you have to pee, you have to stand up, you have to get to the bathroom, you actually have to walk, you have to exert yourself, you have to apply yourself physically. Yes, in life, there are things like that, right? Yes, you might have a livelihood to maintain, right? To ensure that you're financially okay, you're financially secure, and so forth. Yes, there is that. But then beyond that, right, beyond what is necessary, the Buddha's general advice is inclining towards effortlessness.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? If not, what we are going to do next is to take another short break. Okay. And we'll be back at 10:55, another 10-minute break. Okay. Once again, please, you're encouraged to walk around, stand up, stretch. Don't remain seated and be staring at your computer screen. This next exercise we'll be doing is about training us to see that what we take to be problems outside really have a root at the level of physical sensations. Okay. So for example, whenever the thought of an upcoming final exam is causing you worry, right? At the very thought of, oh, final exam is coming in, I don't know, like 8 weeks or so, and then you are wrapped in worry, right? This really has a root in the way we resist to certain physical sensations. And it is this habitual resistance to physical sensation that the uh, horror, the scariness of the problem is infinitely magnified in the mind. So what I'm trying to say is that with this meditation exercise, we're able to see that in the end, it's not really this particular outside problem that we're running away from. We're running away from this kind of physical sensation, right? It's not um, that this particular outside situation is so great, so alluring, it's worth all the efforts in the world. It's really that we are having this habitual and strong reaction towards this other kind of physical sensation. Okay. So in Buddhism, how is suffering caused? Well, first, it's meaningful to differentiate between so-called physical suffering and mental suffering, right? Physical suffering, there's discomfort, yes. There's uncomfortable sensations. They are unavoidable in life. So in life, you're going to experience sometimes excessive heat, excessive cold, or itchiness, right? Pain, so on and so forth, right? The sensations of hunger, sensation of thirst, right? But then on top of that, right, there is the physical and mental fight or struggle against or reaction toward these first order sensations. And this fight, the struggle, this reaction, this friction against reality, so to speak, creates mental anguish. It creates psychological pressure. It creates mental strife. And the second order suffering is entirely removable, right? The first one is unavoidable for as long as there is this phenomenon called life. But the second kind of suffering is optional. And one way to free ourselves from the second kind of suffering is by pacifying unnecessary resistance to physical sensations. Okay, so once again, for the next exercise, feel free to keep your camera on, or if you like, you turn it off. You can adopt whatever uh, physical posture of your preference, right? If you find that practicing meditation while remaining seated or in a lying down position will cause you sleepiness, maybe you want to try meditating standing up, right? Maybe if you uh, think that standing up is creating a lot of unnecessary tension, right? Maybe you could try laying down on the floor, into a sofa, right? Maybe you find that sitting in an upright posture is a really ideal middle ground between those two extremes. Great, then try that. Now, immediately when you're told that a meditation session is beginning, you might detect a subtle type of resistance. It's like when your parents reminded you to go study, to do your homework, you're about to take on some chore. This is a slight unwillingness to settle down, right? Notice that. Notice that as a physical sensation. It's really not, you know, meditation itself that you're resisting. It's the sensations that are triggered. It's the sensations that are typically associated with the idea of meditating, with the idea of doing something that you're fighting against, that you're fearful of, that you're having a reaction towards. Look at that. What are you doing in the body? With regards to some sensations, you're welcoming them. You're looking forward to them. With regards to other sensations, you're afraid of them. You're trying to steer clear of them. With still another kind of sensations, which are largely neutral in hedonic tone, you're feeling blasé about them. You're feeling neutral about them. They don't really induce any strong reaction on your part. And so right now, let's say, if you're experiencing restlessness, you go, I have a hard time pacifying the mind. They're experiencing peace. So look at this restlessness. Is it not a resistance towards the present sensations? There's a part of the mind that goes, this is not good enough. You want to be somewhere else. So, in other words, if you're experiencing restlessness, if you're experiencing agitation, try to see it as a activity in the body, a resistance to the present sensation. In the same way, if you're noticing the mind quieting down, you're beginning to experience some measure of peace. Notice that as an abatement in resistance to the present moment sensations. All these complex things in the world, they boil down to the simple behavior, reaction to sensations, if you really think about it. People you feel like you cannot live without, that you're deeply in love with, you're really in love with the sensations that are associated with the experience of that person, the thought of him or her, the memory of him or her, the projection, a fantasy about him or her. People who wage large-scale wars, it boils down to your responding to physical sensations in a certain way because they're impatient with certain physical sensations, because they're averse to certain physical sensations, because they're obsessed with certain physical sensations. And as you're doing this exercise, stay tethered to physical sensations. Don't just drift into thought world. Even if you're thinking, even if you're observing, right? Stay grounded in physical sensations. One way to help you stay grounded in physical sensations is to ask yourself, what does the relaxing body feels like? The relaxing body is not an idea, it's a dynamic phenomenon that you remain aware of. It's a process. What does the relaxing body feel like? It's a good idea to occasionally come back and to check the way you use your attention. See if you are straining yourself unnecessarily. Like, for example, straining the general eye region, right, where your eyes are. Maybe you're subtly cocking your eyes, trying to stare at something. And maybe you're tightening your shoulders, your head region, as you're trying to be aware. Remind yourself that awareness is a natural function of who you are. You don't have to try to be aware. You can sit back and be like a mirror. Let the relaxing body manifest. You don't need to chase it down. You don't need to have to capture some special image. If people ask you, are you here? You say, yes, I'm present. How do you know you're present? It's because of physical sensations. So are you here? Are you present? And if you say yes, how do you know? How do you know you're present? How do you know you're here? What are the sensations that tell you that you're present? And then as you're trying to do this exercise, you'll notice moments of interruption, moments of distraction, moments where the mind try to run away, moments where the mind is already somewhere else. Look at the activity behind it in the body. When you say you're bored, boredom is a set of physical sensations and your reaction to them. When you say you are not at peace, you're somewhere else, you're distracted. You're really talking about a set of physical sensations and your reaction to those sensations. You can either just quietly observe instances of resistance in the body, the occasional tightening up of the body, corresponding to some thoughts, corresponding to some memories. Or you can deliberately put them aside, relax them, relax resistance, relax reactivity to sensations, allow sensations to come and go without your welcoming some, rejecting some, loving some, and being scared of some. What is a very good way to unravel boredom? Being in the present moment by relaxing the resistance to the present sensations. We usually try to mitigate boredom by running to somewhere else, latching onto something else, exerting ourselves even more. But let's try a different strategy with regards to this instance of boredom, your inability to comfortably be in the present moment. Notice how the body exert itself and resist. And when you unravel that, when you relax that, boredom disappears, or boredom at least becomes manageable. It's something you can harmoniously coexist with. It's no longer this compelling thing. It's no longer this drivenness that causes you to toss and turn every which way. Stay grounded in physical sensations. What is happening right now? What does the relaxing body feel like? Are you comfortably settling into the present and being content? And if not, it's okay. Okay, notice how discontentment is your reaction to the present sensation. This reaction is detectable and manifest in the form of the tightening of the body. It manifests in the recoiling of the body, in the closing off of certain parts of the body. And if you cannot see this, it's okay. Relax. Be patient with it. As you stay with us, your sensitivity will increase. You'll become more and more astute at picking up what is unnecessary exertion. You'll increasingly see the correspondence between mind and body. That a worrying thought, when it arises, it registers in the body in a certain way. It's felt in the body in a certain way. When a hankering thought arises, it's not something abstract, it's something felt. You're neither trying to be somewhere else, nor are you trying to lock yourself down into the present. If you try to lock yourself down or try to force yourself in the present, that's still an exertion. That's a resistance. Just naturally disengage from this yearning, this raring to go. All day, all night, you've been pushed to go somewhere else. You've been propelled by craving to want to do this, to want to do that. Experience that at the body level. What does it feel like when you're impatient, when you're getting pushed, when you're being propelled by like a desire, by an impulse? What does that feel like? The mind has a strong habit to be in a hurry. Are you in a hurry to be somewhere else? Are you in a hurry to quiet down? Are you in a hurry to learn something? Notice that hurriness, how that register as physical sensation. Boredom is not a neutral state. Boredom is you're actively fighting with the present moment. Agitation is not just a mental thing. It's your response, it's your reaction to the way the body is felt right now. At this initial stage of practice, don't worry about if there are thoughts. If you notice that there are thoughts, drop the distracted thoughts and instead think about the Satipatthana topic. Think about what is the relaxing body like. Think about how to better guide yourself to detect resistance in the body. With regard to sensations, your mind is like, I like this. I don't like this. Or when the mind is relaxed, it's wide open. The sensations and rise and pass away on their own accord. Without your having to apply yourself to add extra energy, to impose extra energy into the midst. All the things you're afraid of in the future, it amounts to your reaction to some physical sensation. All the hopes you hold for the future, it amounts to you're reacting to certain physical sensations. Try to see this. Once again, occasionally come back to check the way you're using your attention. Do you need to be staring so hard? Can you soften your gaze? If you don't completely understand this or this phenomena is not very clear to you, it's okay. Just be patient. Keep at it. Just 1 second's worth of clarity does a lot. If this is too complicated for you, it's okay. Just come back to a simple thing. What does the relaxing body feel like? Is the mind well fed? Is the mind willing to relax and settle down? And if it's not, see it as a reaction to physical sensations, as an exertion. Okay, and we are bringing this practice session to an end. Feel free to turn your camera back on. Questions or comments about this little exercise we did? If you'd like to share your experience, maybe you find it very frustrating, you find you're very confused about what to do, or you really enjoy it. You can see clearly how our so-called hopes and fears are really just the body tightening up in response to some sensations. Any thoughts? Anyone want to share his or her experience? So,
Okay.
yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, Professor. Hi, everyone. Just today I'm really interested in the way to practice relaxation meditation. In Vietnamese, it means thiền buông thư. That's right, in Vietnamese. But relaxation meditations is very popular with young people, and especially when uh, I guide young people to practice meditation in the retreat. And I often get them to practice relaxation meditation during the nap time. Yeah. So I often call this one something like lying meditation, and get everybody and lie down on the floor, relax themselves, and then with the music background, best of music, right? And we just practice about 15 minutes, and then all the people, maybe almost all the people, just go into very deep sleep. Yeah, so it's
Okay,
very.
so it's actually very important to note that tranquilization of sankharas is really different from, like the secular forms of relaxation techniques. There are a lot to be said about this topic. So, number one, when you play background music, right, the purpose is oftentimes to lull the mind into sleepiness.
Mhm,
But um, what we're doing here is satipatthana. So we are trying to relax in an ardent and aware way. We
mhm,
are giving attention to how sankharas are pacified. We're looking
yeah.
at the process of letting go, right? We're
Mhm,
trying to render the mind more sensitive so that it is able to see clearly the connection between mental anguish and our reaction to sensations, and so on and so forth. So the Buddhist technique of uh, pacifying sankharas, yes, there is an element of relaxation to it, and this is what we're focusing on today. But to say that, oh, it is simply about helping people to rest, like to get people to be hypnotized by new agey music, right? Or
No,
they're
no, not at all.
simultaneously getting
Not
like
at
a
all. It's
spa
not my
treatment, right?
thinking.
It would be very different, right? It would be
Yeah,
very
it is
different. So,
no, it's not my thinking. I
yeah.
want to share something more about that. It's okay. Yes, it's not my thinking. And I want to share the techniques and how to start a practice. Okay, it's all right. It's not my thinking at all. Yeah, it's not my thinking at all. I'm sorry. Yeah. Of course, just wanna, I just want to say that's a very good purpose to practice. And here I often practice with starting with the breath, and then I just scan every something like every part of my body, and from the head to the foot, I scan very profoundly. Yes, yeah, mindfully. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah,
Hmm. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, there's another thing to be said about this relaxation technique that we didn't have a chance to talk about, and it's how well integrated it is to the so-called right view, right? So in the early Buddhist scheme of things, there's this thing called the Eightfold Noble Path, and it begins with right view and culminates in right samadhi or right concentration. And um, we, we, we we can tentatively define right view as um, this attitude we hold towards experiences wherein we're willing to explore greater freedom, where we're willing to explore the possibility of further letting go. Okay, so this is what constitutes right view. And so your pacification sankhara is different from the simple physical relaxation technique in that it's very well integrated with right view. So why is it that we want, to not lean on sensuality? Why is it that we don't want to hedge our bets when it comes to our personal happiness on sensual pursuit, right? Why is it that we don't want to become mentally dependent on pleasures are precarious, fleeting, impermanent, unreliable, right, in nature, right? So in the end, this relaxation practice will help us see that a lot of our insistence, a lot of our obsession, a lot of our attachment, they're built on irrationality. They're built on just blind habits, right? It's because every single time the mind goes into these superficial forms of gaining pleasure, procuring pleasure, it gets a semblance of a relief. But the relief is not lasting, it's not sustainable, it doesn't lead to very gratifying experiences, but it's strong enough to perpetuate the behavioral loop, you see. And here, what we're trying to do, and yes, in the beginning, we may just focus on the superficial aspect, right, just relaxing. But in the end, we will be able to see that the reason we're so deluded about nature of happiness is because of how tense we are, right? If you can suffuse your body with ease, then you be in a better position to more objectively assess what constitutes a high caliber experience. Yeah. Okay. Other thoughts or questions? Please be reminded that for this week, you'll be writing and submitting another weekly assignment. It doesn't have to be long. It could be half a page long if you like. It could be longer if you like, right? And you'll be specifically writing about step number 4, pacifying bodily sankhara, what we talked about today. How do we treat relaxation as an ongoing process? How do we relax all the while remaining grounded in the physical sensations, right? So not just treating relaxation as a mantra, not just treat relaxation as an idea, as a mere uh, mandate, but we are grounded in physical sensations. We're using physical sensations as cues, as feedback to help us adjust our way to relax, right? And then how we're training to relax into heightened sensitivity not into complacency, not into sleepiness, not into torpor, right? We maintain this keen interest in discovering subtler aspects of the body. So when you're relaxed, you're more able to discover this, what is known as the subtle body in Buddhist terminology, the body inside body, right? We also wanted to, you can also write about, um, how reaction to physical sensations really constitutes all the hopes and fears, right, that people experience in life. Yeah. And by the way, you don't have to write about all these things, okay? You could just pick one, you could pick two of these topics. Any ideas? Any questions? Yes, Xiaojing.
Professor, I have a question.
Yeah.
During this process of meditation, uh, the there's a discomfort in my in the area about my body, that
Yeah.
is my head area, and
Yeah.
I know this kind of discomfort might be related with the accumulation of
Okay.
nerves or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very familiar with this feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it just rose up, so I just try to relax on this feeling, but
Okay.
the feeling is kind of strong, not strong, but it
Yeah.
is mm,
Yeah.
last long, and I'm wondering in this kind of
Yeah.
situation
Yeah.
if it
Okay.
is, yeah.
All right. Good. 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 That's a very good question, right? So, every time someone asks a good question, it reminds me of things I'm supposed to cover, but I've forgotten to cover, right? Um, in modern day setting, when you go on a meditation retreat, right, you're frequently told to sit through all painful sensations and try to remain motionless, right? Try not to change the posture, for example, and this will facilitate your understanding of how body is dukkha, right? But if you look at the way the Buddha teaches in the early suttas, that's not the sort of advice he gives. Equanimity is only good when there's nothing else you can do to objectively reduce the physical discomfort. So if you experience numbness of the legs, and then you could somehow just adjust your posture, right? Or you could, get up for a while, you could rest a little bit, right? And the numbness goes away, great. Maybe you do that, right? But then
um,
let me
okay,
uh
okay.
yeah. So but then in life there are sensations are that you could hardly do anything about. Okay. So for example, if you're meditating in rainforests like a lot of ancient Indians did, and you're bitten by mosquitoes, you're experiencing itchiness, and you're not really meditating in an air-conditioned space, right? There's excessive heat, there's um, excessive humidity, and so forth. So with regards to sensations you have no control over, then equanimity is the key. So what is equanimity? There are many different ways to explain it, but one way to understand equanimity is you realize how your reaction, your resistance to a sensation is futile. They don't serve a purpose, right? Sometimes our actions are meaningful. They're constructive. They serve a purpose. You take a medicine and pain goes away. It's a meaningful activity, right? But sometimes your activities are not meaningful, are not constructive. In fact, most of our activities are meaningless. Most of our activities are wailing and flailing in futility against pain, against suffering. Daydreaming is a futile reaction, resistance, right? So in equanimity, we conserve our energy. We um, make accepting the main sort of mental frame, right? Acceptance, radical acceptance, the main sort of mental frame. And so on top of the already present physical sensations, we don't add another layer of suffering associated with mental resistance. You see, that's what equanimity means. Now, there's another thing I wanted to share, and that is oftentimes a lot of chronic pain, chronic discomfort in the body, they are really due to your holding your body together in a certain way. You're having certain personality, you're having certain tendencies. They oftentimes will reflect in, they will manifest in some kind of physical sensation. So chronic lack of confidence, for example, you're chronically suffering from very low self-esteem, for example, may manifest in the form of certain discomfort. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with you, okay? I'm just saying that there are these mental tendencies, there are these um, long-term habitual tendencies that manifest in the form of bodily sensations. And if you keep meditating, a lot of this will naturally unravel. Okay, I am not saying that meditation will treat, will cure all instances of pain. I'm not saying that. Okay, there are instances of pain, discomfort in life. That's just part of life, right? That's just part of the whole baggage. There's nothing you can do about it, but a lot of the bothersome sensations will leave you when you've gone through detox, so to speak, mental detox, so to speak, as you are less and less bothered by certain mental tendencies, mental defilements, and so forth, chances are your body will also clear up to some extent. You will have access to more serene, more pleasant sensations in the body. Your immune system is not constantly taxed to the maximum, it's not constantly stressed, right? And um, you could either take an antidotal approach to the discomfort, or you could just keep practicing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Are there thoughts, questions? We're all good. We don't have to use up the remaining few minutes. We could just end the class on this note. Okay. No more
Quick,
questions about weekly assignment too. You're good.
yes, the weekly assignment.
Yes,
Is
please.
it possible for you to send an email of the list of suggested topics that you're saying about the fourth step?
Oh, for this week, it's just on the fourth
Yes,
step,
yes.
right?
So
And
the
like I
fourth
said,
step.
you could write about relaxation technique. You could
Mhm.
write about physical resistance, right? Or resistance to physical sensations. I guess these two pretty much cover what we talked about, right? Yeah.
Yes, but
But if you have
before.
question, if you want me to remind you once again, just drop me a line. I'll send a brief note to you saying you could write about relaxation, or you could write about, resistance to physical sensations. Yeah. And
Okay.
alternatively, these class sessions are being recorded, right? And so you will be able to revisit them if you like, revisit the practice sessions if you like. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? You're good? All right. Please take care. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.